In the last video, we talked about how for these percent problems where, a percent is part out of 100, we need to turn it into a percent. We need that part out of a whole, okay? And what we were kind of leading to is the fact that we have an equation that we can use to just fill it in and figure out the missing piece. Remember, sometimes we'll be missing the part, sometimes we'll be missing the percent, sometimes we'll be missing the whole. So our equation is part equals percent times whole. Now, a couple things, and we'll eventually turn this into some variables here. Percent goes right here, but before we can multiply or divide or do anything, we do need to change it to a decimal. Okay, that's kind of why we did our work with converting earlier on. So let's use this equation in this problem here. So in Ty's English class, 70% of the students complete an essay by the due date. There are 30 students in his class. How many completed it by the due date? So we have our percent. That's easy to find with the percent sign. 30 students. If there's 30 total students, right, that's our whole. If we're looking how many completed it, that's our part. So if we look at this equation here, just go along with me. I'm going to use the letter A to represent the part, equals our percent, 70%, times our whole, so times 30. Okay, but again, do not go 70 times 30. Change it into a decimal. 2 places to the left, drop the percent sign. So that's 0.70, or just 0.7 is fine, times 30. And then again, you can figure this out or just grab a calculator. When you grab a calculator, that ends up being 21. 70% of 30 is 21. So 21 students completed the essay. 70% of the students completed by the due date. How many completed the essay by due date? 21 students. Okay, so again, if we use this equation, we fill in the pieces, then we can just solve for our unknown. All right, so here it says an algebraic approach to finding a part given a percent of the whole. A bag of candy contains 300 pieces, which 28% are red. How many pieces are red? So what represents the whole? The 300, right? The 300 pieces are the total number of pieces. So which of the terms in the percent equation is unknown? Define a letter or a variable to represent that. Well, we have part equals the percent times the whole. Okay? We know the percent and we know the whole. What we don't know is the part. Okay? So the part is how many pieces are red. Okay? And I'm going to use the letter A. And I'm using the letter A because that comes into play later on. It's going to be A. Okay? So it says write and solve an equation to find the unknown quantity. So I'm going to use A for part. Our percent is 28% times our whole, which is 300. Okay, so again, I'm just using this equation here. I change my percent into a decimal. So it's 28 hundredths, 0.28 times 300. And again, you can just grab a calculator. 84. Okay, so A equals 84 what? Red candies, or red pieces. Okay, so let's take a look at this next example because it looks really, really, really similar to the one we just did. The difference with this one, if you notice, again, it says a bag of candy contains 300 pieces, 28% which are red, but then it says how many pieces are not red. So it says write an equation to represent the number of pieces that are not red. All right, so again, we're focusing on what is not red. So if you think about it in terms of percentages, 300 pieces, that's 100%. 28% are red. So if I subtract 28%, 100 minus 28% is going to be 72%. 72% of the bag of candy is not red. All right, so I'm going to just write my equation down here. So again, we're using part equals percent times whole. We're looking for our part. Now, I guess they called it N right here, but Normally I use A. Our percent is 28%. So again, I'm going to change that to a decimal and make it 0.28 times the, no, not 28. Remember, we just changed it. Sorry, 0.72 times our whole, which is 300. And again, if you type that into a calculator, you get 216. So in the bag of candies, 216 are not red. All right, so again, be careful reading directions if it's asking for, in this case, what are the red candies or what are not red. All right, let's finish this up. Zoe inflated 28 balloons. That's 15% of the total number of balloons inflated for the dance. How many balloons are there in total? So I'm not going to verify using a visual model, but I am going to write an equation. So remember, it's part equals percent times whole. Always find the percent first, 15%, and I'm going to change that to a decimal right away, 0.15. And now, just like we've been working on, do we know the part or the whole? She inflated 24 balloons. That's 15% of the total. So that's the part. Times, and we don't know the whole, so I'm going to use a variable b. Again, just as a hint from before. Don't stress at this part because we know how to solve an equation. We're solving for b, so we have to get rid of this 0.15. So I'm going to divide this side by 0.15. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Grab your calculator and go 24 divided by 0.15, and we get 160. So again, what are we trying to find? Solve the problem. How many balloons are there in total? So there's 160 total balloons. All right. Last question. And again, hopefully you see that if you write down the equation, fill in what you know, it's solving equations like we've been doing. Haley is making admission tickets to the middle school dance. She has made so far 112, and her plan is to make 320. What percent? So write down your formula. Part equals percent times whole. And again, not verifying using a visual model. She's made 112, and her plan is to make 320. That means 320 is the whole. The part is 112. And I'll use a variable that makes sense, p for percent. At this point, what are we solving for? P, what do we have to get rid of? 320. It's times 320, so I'm going to divide by 320. Whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. That should all sound familiar because I say it all the time. P equals, and then we go 112 divided by 320 equals 0.35. Now, one piece of advice, when you get to this point, don't stop. Remember, we're looking for the percent. The percent isn't 0.35, but if we move it 2 places to the right and add the percent sign, then we can know that she's made 35% of the tickets. Big ideas out of today's lesson. Use the formula. Fill in the pieces you know, and then solve for what you don't know.